So number one, I promise I won't talk as long as the rabbi. Number two, Gary Lichten, where are you? My kids, they talked about your artwork through the whole, all night, so I think I have to come over and you have to open a Judaic shop somewhere or go online because it's absolutely gorgeous. And I was thinking, oh, there you are. And it really is beautiful. I remember when Rabbi first came to town and brought shmura matzah over to my office, and I refused to see him because I had no idea what Chabad was and how anybody wanted me to eat this awful stuff. I just couldn't understand. I thought it must be not something good. I even like it now, but we are people of the book. It's the text that defines us. And if you think about it, when we tell stories, it could be a Jew 2,000 years ago, or 1,500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 500 years ago, and we would all know the same text, and we would all know the same stories. And those stories bind us together. But those stories also teach us something about our own lives, because we look in those stories and we see reflected back from those stories learnings about ourselves, our family, our friends, our obligation to community. So I want to tell you, if we've been reading the Torah portions recently, I know, Rabbi, I don't show up in shul often enough, but I do read the Torah portions every week, that I want to look at one of our traditional stories, but let's see if we can feel in this story some reflection of what's going on here today. So there was this guy. He lived in a place where it was very comfortable. Everything in his life was very orderly. He knew the rules. He knew what was going on, and he was comfortable. But that wasn't enough for him, because he was surrounded by a rabble of Jews, and they were underprivileged. They were under the finger of the Egyptians, and he had this visceral feel that he had to go out and do something in life to make their life better. So he went out and he organized them at his own great expense, because he was living a pretty good life. Now, start to think about whether you can think of anybody else that this might be a metaphor for. And so he gathered people together one by one. I'm sure he didn't just get them to all march out of Mitzrayim together, but he gathered them together and he convinced them that there was something better for them. And they marched forth together. And then, of course, they were really just like this family of Jews that we have here. They complained. Life wasn't good enough. The food, well, we never complain here the food isn't good enough, but they complained that maybe it was better where they were. Maybe they shouldn't have to follow so many rules. Maybe they should worship something like a golden calf instead of some higher cause. And then he got them to start giving, because they had to build a Mishkan. And he went to them and got them to freely give of what they had. And of course, each gave according to his own means. And then they built something, and he pulled them together, and they became more than just the individual 600,000 who stood at Sinai, but they actually became a community. Now we know when God spoke to them at Sinai, he spoke to them as a community, but he also spoke to each one individually. Is anybody getting the hint here? Does this feel like anybody you know? In fact, we even know that his family, his wife, and even his father-in-law were very important in his life. And although I don't think Rabbi Alevsky is a Midianite like Yitro was, but Yitro gave Moses a lot of advice. And I'm sure Rabbi Alevsky has given you a little bit here and there, Rabbi Sasankin. And there he was, bringing the Jews, and those who traveled with them, by the way, and the openness that we have here models that, towards something really better. So let's bring ourselves back to those few years ago when this fella showed up in my office with a shmura matzah. He left a very comfortable Chabad community where people prayed and studied and did minyan just like he did. And it was very comfortable, I'm sure. And decided to go out to this rabble, and we indeed must surely be I wonder what he says at night. I know he doesn't say it because Rabbi and Kayla would never say a wrong word. But I wonder what he thought when he looked at all of us in Akron and said, what is this group? And where can I take them? Where can I lead them? And how much will I have to do to get them to understand that there is a promised land? And what is the promised land for Jews? It is being together. It is working in community. It is doing the kinds of things that we do here. And so, in many ways, he was the Pied Piper, to use a more modern term. He was the one who started to bring us together, who got us to march out of our loneliness, out of that indifference that we felt. We were hungry, but we didn't know where to go, how to show up, what to be, how to be together. And Kayla's beautiful smile and wonderful food and great organization and Rabbi's soft words and friendliness, as if both of them had all the time in there. I still want to understand this because I think all of us know there's some magic here, right? There is some amount of time that they have. We may have 24 hours in the day. Surely they have 36 or 48 or maybe 72. Because how can they always be there for us individually and always be there for us as a community? But they took this rabble. We're so different. Look around this room, how different we are. Some of us enjoy coming to shul. Some of us enjoy studying. Some of us enjoy Purim. Some of us, we're all so different, just as the Israelites marching out of Mitzrayim were. And the two of them together brought us together and have us marching and had us build a Mishkan. And we're, I think, pretty happy about marching. And we're not even complaining as much as the Israelites did, Rabbi. So I think we owe the same kind of debt of gratitude that the Jewish people owe to our forefathers for coming here to Akron, Ohio, for deciding that this community was worth giving their lives for. And indeed, they have given every waking moment of their lives for us. What little we could do for them, this building is the least that we could do for our gratitude. For those two who have enriched our lives so deeply, just by being our friend, just by being there when we needed them, just by being there 72/7 for all of us. So the rabbi mentioned this week's Torah portion, Balak. So remember, the Jews are now marching through the desert, and they're actually are asking, can we please march through? We won't turn left, we won't turn right, we'll just go straight through your territory, and we'll be nice guys, and we won't worry you. And no one will let them go through the territory. Everything is a battle. Probably not as hard as raising money for this building, but everything is a battle. And then Balak, to try to stop them, because they seem to be winning everywhere, Balak goes to the prophet Balaam and says, you must curse the Jews. And what does Balaam say in the end? In the end, Balaam says, I can't curse the Jews. I can only say what comes out of our mouth, and what comes out of my mouth are God's words. I spoke about this with my grandchildren this week, and I asked them to consider whether what comes out of their mouth is God's words. We live in a world today where the things that come out of our respective mouths are so awful sometimes, are so much about ourselves, are so little about taking into account that others have needs, that there are other points of view other than ours. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could look at our own mouths and say, what comes out of our mouths is what God puts in, not the lower and base things that we might want to say. Well, somehow I think Rabbi Mendy and Kayla must have read this Torah portion a few times. Maybe, I'm not quite sure how old they are, so I won't say, but more than a few times. Because think about what comes out of their mouths. It is surely God's words. It is surely the words that comfort us as a community and comfort us as individuals when we need them. That's the present that they have given us. Yes, we're glad to have helped you along the way. We're glad to have helped you. Louis and Frida Style, Louis of blessed memory, there was never a guy when we needed anything in this community. When you called Louis Style, he said yes. I had a list of people I called, and many of you were on that list, and many of you said yes many times. But Louis was number one on the list because he said yes always, because he cared. And it's a real tribute to your family that you got this thing started. And the ECAS background in this project and allowing this to have a future, Harvey, is something that is I've never been actually involved in a project that wasn't short, that could actually see a future that you've made possible here. And there's so many others, the great work that Doug did, and Bobby, yours, and you guys and your family, the Cooper family, Mickey and Bobby stepping up. They're just, I could name so many of you. But you know, when we built the Mishkan, everyone did according to their own means. That was what was so brilliant about it, because that meant it came from the heart, and I'm sure everyone in this room did just that. So in the very end, what were the words that Balaam said? What words came out of Balaam's mouth? Well, there's a whole, the rabbi quoted a few of them, but the ones that we know the most, the ones that resonate with all of us, are Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob. How goodly are your dwellings, O Israel. Well, look around you. How goodly is this dwelling that we are all in. It is clearly from the mouth of God that Rabbi and Kayla deserve every moment of enjoying this, and we plan on celebrating with the two of you for many, many more years. May we all have the great words from God come from our mouths. Rabbi and Kayla, thank you so much for leading our community.